the title of this talk is essentially why would anyone follow you? And the reason that I'm talking about this is because it has been a question that I've been asked at interview before. And let's say the first time I was asked this question, I sort of struggled to answer it, but it's also been a question that I now ask other people as I interview them for roles and jobs. And as leaders in education, and we're all leaders in education, I think it's a really interesting question for us to think about. So before I get onto that, I think it's useful to kind of provide some context. So those of you who've listened to me speak before, like this is my go-to picture that I have on my slides, because I find it really ironic. This is a tweet by a parody account that was posted a while back now, but essentially summarise the kind of typical journey of like these young high-flying teachers who come into the profession and move up the ranks really quickly and, you know, become senior leaders very early in their careers. And just for comparison, here's my journey. So you'll notice it's very, very similar. Started as an unqualified teacher in 2014, and in 2020, I am now a vice principal. So as much as I laughed at this tweet, it definitely rings true for me that this has been my journey. But I think what's happened in that is that I've actually had lots of interviews. There's lots and lots of jobs and kind of little roles that have happened in between all of those stages, in which I've had to present myself as someone who's credible and as someone who can get the job done. So I hope that actually I can talk about this from some kind of personal experience about the realities of demonstrating what you have to offer to people and to lead others. So I return to the question, why would anyone follow you? And I imagine that if you were in a position interviewing and you were asked this question, that you might say something along the lines of, well, I'm really credible, I know what I'm talking about, I have a track record of showing great impact, I know how to write an action plan, I know how to do data analysis, etc., etc. And that is pretty much what my response was to this question when I was asked this in interview. However, I think it has caused some thoughts for me because there is a new emerging idea around this concept of fellowship. And there's lots of leadership research out there. There was some research that talked about how there was 146,000 hits on kind of leadership related books on Amazon in 2015. You know, everyone goes on about leadership. But there's this new idea of fellowship, and I've just got some quotes that I've pulled off from some articles, and here is the first one. There is no leader without at least one follower. That's obvious. Yet the modern leadership industry, now a quarter century old, is built on the proposition that leaders matter a great deal and followers hardly at all. This is an old article, but essentially it's making the point about the importance of followers as well as considering leadership. Here's another quote. This one's from a more recent paper from Forbes, and it says, good skilled followers are able to nurture good leadership by invisibly helping keep a novice leader upright and on track. It's a lost art in our narcissistic times. So essentially making the point around the kind of dynamic between leaders and followers and how important that dynamic is. And actually, if you're going to be a new or novice leader, then having a good group of followers is probably going to help you get the job done. But for me, actually, whilst all of that is really interesting, what has been really interesting for me is what I've taken away from this book. And essentially, my whole talk is quotes from this book because it has been really revolutionary for me. So I'm hoping that both Marcus and Ashley will give me a retweet on this book. I am not getting any commission from these guys, I promise. But I do think that some of the things they talk about with regards to leadership are really pertinent. The book actually talks about things broader than leadership. It's actually just the last chapter that refers to leadership. But actually what it says is just so powerful. So here's a quote that I've pulled out. I'm just going to read it because, again, every time I read it, I have a new bit of revelation because I think it's so powerful. This is the true lesson in leading from the real world. A leader is someone who has followers, plain and simple. The only determinant of whether anyone is leading is whether anyone is following. This might seem like an obvious statement until we recall how easily we overlook its implications. Followers, their needs, their feelings, their fears and hopes are strangely absent when we speak of leaders as exemplars of strategy, execution, vision, oratory, relationships, charisma, and so on. Those are exactly the sort of things that we would be saying in an interview in response to the question, why would anyone follow you? It goes on to say, the idea of leadership is missing the idea of followers. It's missing the idea that our subject here is at heart, a question of a particularly human relationship, namely, why would anyone choose to devote his or her energies to and to take risks on behalf of someone else? And in that, it's missing the entire point. And for me, this is just such a powerful passage in this book around the importance of the human relationship and the value of followers. And actually, if we're going to think about leaders, then we can't think about leaders and leadership without thinking about those that are going to follow. And the book goes on to ask these questions. Why do we follow? What makes us work hard? What makes us place some part of our destiny in the hands of others? And then it goes on to explain these questions. So broadly speaking, we want to feel part of something bigger than ourselves, the best of we, while at the same time we're feeling that our leader knows and values us for who we are as a unique individual, the best of me. And I love this bit. More specifically, we follow leaders who connect us to a mission we believe in, who clarify what's expected of us, who surround us with people who define excellence the same way we do, who value us for our strengths, who show us that our teammates will be there for us, who diligently replay our winning plays, who challenge us to keep getting better, and who give us confidence in the future. Like, absolutely, sign me up. I want to work for this company or this school. I think they've just summarised this so well. And then it goes to say that this is not a list of qualities in a leader, but rather a set of feelings in a follower. When we say to ourselves that leadership is indeed a thing, because we know it when we see it, we're not really seeing any definable characteristic of another human. What we are seeing is, in fact, our feelings as a follower. And I think that's the point here, that if we are going to do leadership well, then we really have to be thinking about the followers. And when we're talking about, being someone who can analyse data, or someone who can galvanise a team, or someone who can stand up in front of staff and deliver CPD, actually what we should be thinking about is the feelings and the experience of those followers if we are to become the best leaders that we can. And so I return to this question, why would anyone want to follow me? And actually, rather than a response that is focused on those things around strategic skills and logistics and being able to speak in front of people, or knowing behaviour management, or having knowledge of safeguarding or knowledge of curriculum, actually I think this is what I would like to say. That I can galvanise a team around a common vision through aligned and ethical decision making. I can develop meaningful relationships with individuals around setting them up to be successful and their development being a priority. I can develop absolute clarity around what we are about and the expectations we have. And I can instill confidence by celebrating successes and providing adequate challenge. And actually, that's the sort of thing that I should be talking about. But not only that, that should be the sort of thing that I'm working hard to ensure I can do, and actually thinking carefully about the kind of mechanisms that I can establish and maintain that's going to allow these things to happen. But I think there's a cautionary note here. I don't think that you can do all of those things without having a clear sense of who you are and what you're about and what you bring to the table. For those of you who heard me speak before, be it at Diverse Educators or Women-Ed, or more recently on my live webinar with Niall Alcock, you'll know that I'm really passionate about talking about authentic leadership and the journey that I have been on of discovering who I am, what my values are, and what I bring to the table. And so I don't think you can do all of those things effectively. I don't think you can build that culture and climate where you have a group of followers who are just completely enamoured by a shared sense of purpose, who feel a real connection to a team, who feel that they're really valued and they're able to be developed, who feel that they're alongside teammates who absolutely have the same standard of excellence working alongside them, and who actually follow and are happy to devote time and energy to that person who's leading the charge. I don't think you can do any of that without having a clear sense of who you are. And if you are interested in that, then feel free to check out my Twitter profile, check out my blog. And there's also a pinned link to the webinar that I did with Niall Alcock, and a few resources that are on the William and Beta community as well that you can check out. I thought I'd just leave you with one final extract from the book, which is this. This is why the idea of leadership is a thing is a lie. When you take any of our definitions of that thing and then you try and locate it in the real world, you encounter exception upon exception upon exception. The very least we can conclude is that if there is some magical set of attributes, we haven't yet figured out what they are, and that plenty of leaders are doing plenty of leading without many of them. And if that's the case, then the things that supposedly make up leadership neither add to our understanding of it nor help us be better at it. So this is my huge plug for this book, 9 Lies About Work. I'm so grateful to a good friend of mine, Dave, who shared this book with me, and I am continuing to read bits of it and be challenged by it. And that's all from me.
Aziza, thank you so much. Do you know what? Again, so many people in the comments section there, and you'll be able to see it when you come back to it, are really buying into your vision. They're buying into all the things that you're saying, you know, about authentic leadership. If there's one thing, one big share about being a leader you could give me, what would it be?
It's a great question. I think the big point that I would say is like senior leadership's hard. Like school leadership is hard. It is tough for so many reasons. Yeah. But I think you can lean into the challenge of it and actually learn a lot about yourself and who you are. And I think that is then the key to being an authentic leader. So I would say don't kind of compartmentalize the challenges and the emotions that are associated with school leadership. Like dig into them, because actually I think they result in you becoming a more authentic leader, which then means you can do a better job. Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us today, Aziza, as well. It's been really, really great to have you with us talking.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Graham, for putting this together.
No worries at all. Take care. Look after yourself. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Will do. Thanks.
Bye.